This is IBM Museum. I do have a few other videos planned out, but I wanted something that was just short tonight. And I thought I would go through and revisit that PICMG interface, the single board computers, and go through. Just a few previous videos ago, I had shown a board that I wanted to go through, and I didn't find the information online, so I wanted to go through and plug it in and test it. And I do have some other IBM systems that are based on that sort of single board computer design. But let me get turned around and I'll go over this one. This is actually a this is a board for an IBM industrial system, and it is that PICMG. And this actually goes through and makes up, it composes, there's a couple boards at different levels, same base CPU and that it supports, just a little bit different configuration for the boards. And I've got a lot of materials on the 7585, and I've got a couple of these units actually I'll go through and can show, and of course that'll be a much longer video. And this is a real nice board, but as I was going through, even a lot of components here on the back, and as I was going through and handling it, I did hear a little ping, and of course you can see all the little capacitors and resistors. But I had a surface mount capacitor that fell off, and I've got it stuck in there on the tape just to keep it handy. So when I go through, and I'll probably, and I don't know if I'll go through this on video, it certainly would be something where I would just go through and see if I can find the location where this thing may have gone to. I'm pretty sure by the appearance that it's somewhere here on the what they consider the solder side. I mean, the not supposed to necessarily have components on less populated boards. They have the component side, which is where most of the stuff is. But I'll have to go through and locate where that may have come from, and just to see. And I do with the other systems I have. I mean, those will be pulled out and everything else. I'll cover all that in probably a much longer video. This is the board. Get this off to the side. And this is the board that I showed previously. That's interested in kind of determining a little bit more of what it was, and to be able to power it up and to test it. Now, just off over here, I do have a case. I'll go through and I can flip to the webcam, and I'll go through, and of course I'll pause as necessary too, just to keep that short theme where I can go through and open the top of this unit up. And I'm going to leave all the drives and everything else connected to the power supply, although it has a single board computer in it. It's not an IBM. But I can't, and it's supposed to be Windows NT 4.0 that's loaded on this, and that doesn't run. There's a clock battery. I'll go through and show as I pull that board out and kind of get it off to the side so I can load this board in it and go through and test. And so let me go through and pause the video, get set up on my camera angles, and I will be right back. Okay, and I went through and just moved the camcorder in, got the webcam out of the way, and I've already gone through and pulled the screws for the bracket on the back. This is just a, you know, it helps tension the adapters that you would have in here. And you do see kind of the advantage of the system with, in this case, it's got all these ISA slots. And I mean, there's adjustments that you have to work with on these just to make sure that you don't have any adapters that conflict or anything like that. And then there is some PCI that's over on, and that'll be a little bit more visible as I go through and pull the board out of here. And this one is just a, I don't know the manufacturer of it. I mean, it's a nice enough board, the CPU and the RAM and everything. It does have the things like the keyboard and mouse and serial port off on a little bracket there. Another bracket for the serial and parallel interface there. And I'm going to leave it connected up to all the drives, the diskette drives, the hard drive that's on the system. That's in the lower assembly of this case. And I'll just have them to where they won't be connected up to any controller. They'll be connected up to power and everything else, but that won't hurt anything. And I think the main issue that I encounter with this is this weird battery for the configuration. And I've got to go through and either figure out, you know, how, if it goes through and charges or something, or just to go through and pull it out of the system. And it does have, underneath, it does have a 4-pin header. So it may be some sort of rechargeable battery, and I may just be able to go through and put pins on there for an external battery. And by the cable lengths and everything else, I'm just going to try to get this off out of the way of where I'm going to go through and put the IBM board in. And of course it'll go in the appropriate slot. It's got to mate with this PICMG bus that's right here on the front of this one slot. And then the back slot is effectively, you know, an ISA pin out for just being carried over to the other slots. You can see the the two PCI slots in there. And there are some boards that do have more PCI slots or have an overwhelming amount of PCI slots compared to the ISA. It just depends on the backplane. And I think the IBM models that I will show, the 7585 models, they're real good for that, because one case has a lot of ISA slots like this one, and the other one has a bunch of PCI slots. So I've got the card seated. I'm going to go through, since it has a shared keyboard and mouse connector, PS2. So I'm going to connect up this assembly, connect up power and video. And so let me go through and pause the video as I do that, and then I will be right back. Okay, there I'm quickly connected. And I'm going to go through and flip over to the VGA capture. And let's power things up. And you can hear the noise. I mean, these are designed to be in an industrial setting. And nice little IBM logo there. I'm pressing F2 to get into the setup. And that looks pretty good for even being the widescreen. And it is actually fairly close on time for whenever that battery is put in, whether this configuration was run before, because that's actually saying it's 2:35 in the morning, and it's about 9 p.m. local time here. So 2100, so just about 19 hours off. I've never ran this board otherwise. I've never had it in the slot to go through and configure it. And we do see that this is a Pentium 3, and it's 1266 megahertz, so pretty good CPU. And then it looks like we've got quite a bit of RAM on there in those two DIMMs that are there. And so, yeah, well over 500 megabyte. And this would probably be a good system for like a Windows 2000, something like that. And for the case, I'll probably go through and I can use this as kind of a testing platform for the PICMG boards that I have, just to especially that one after I repair it, find that where that capacitor, that surface mount capacitor was. And so what I was wanting to do is to go through, and of course I don't have any drives or anything else connected. I mean, normally those would show in there. It's got the 2 channels of the IDE, so 8 possible IDE drives there. And just for this, it has the numlock, whether it's auto or probably disable. Okay, on, off, or auto. And we'll leave it to auto. I have this small rack keyboard with the trackpad on it, and a lot of time I go through and I prefer to turn off the numlock on boot, because all the keys are shared on the smaller keyboard. So advanced version information. Okay, so the main BIOS. I'm going to wheel out my chair here, and it shows the BIOS versions. I don't have any indications online of what level that is, or whether there's any later BIOS that's out there. And then it talks about the microcode, and it seems like it has several that are held there, and maybe kind of in reserve or whatever, that it can flip back to for older versions maybe. And I don't know if Jose Marti is someone that had it, or what the deal is there. Okay, so advanced boot options, the summary screen, that might be good to turn on. Boot time diagnostic screen, let's go through and let's turn that on too. Quick boot mode, let's leave that disabled for now. Floppy check disabled, since we don't have a diskette drive connected to it right now. Post errors enabled. Enter setup enabled. Serial console. And let's go through I don't know to go through. Probably it doesn't hurt to go through and set that up. Although I don't want, I still want to see information on the screen. I don't think that that would go through and disable it for anything like that. Okay, advanced hard drive options. You have your large disk access mode, and that is DOS or other, local bus, IDE adapter, both, and that's probably referring to both channels. Smart device monitoring, which is probably good to have enabled if you have those IDE drives of that level. Primary IDE cable type is auto, secondary IDE cable type of auto, and that's probably worth leaving. I just want to look through standard, fast. Okay. Yeah, just the standard and fast settings for that. Advanced chipset control. Video, primary video. We'll probably leave it set to, okay, it's PCI or AGP. That might be interesting just on how the AGP is set up. And then it's got all your graphics apertures and what board is treated as primary. Enable memory gap. I'm just going to scroll through these, and I mean, it gives some text as far as helping embedded USB device and okay, and then your EMI reduction, an EMI reduction policy, and I've not heard of, and they're talking about electromagnetic interference. I've not seen a computer to really know those yet. So there's our advanced OS options. Installed OS is set to other. We have Win98, Win2000, WinXP, and other. I'm just going to leave that set to other for now. Your power plan, or the ability to go through and it gives the acronym there, Advanced Configuration and Power Interface, and talks about the thought of it, disabling it. Okay, there's your extended system configuration data area, and your secure setup configuration. Yes, prevents a plug-and-play operating system from changing system settings. That might be interesting in its own right. System monitoring, hardware monitor controls. There we have our CPU temperature. We can check, and I mean 100 degrees centigrade or 212 Fahrenheit, relatively warm to the touch. Variable variable fan speed control enabled. Processor fan tachometer. Okay, and that's the number of pulses per revolution generated by the fan tachometer. So I guess if you switch the fan, that goes through and you can dial it in so the system is reading the RPM correctly. And then your system fan 1 and system fan 2, and that's probably those headers somewhere on that board for adding other fans. Hardware monitor inputs, processor fan speed 15,000 RPM, system 1 fan speed no function, system 2 fan speed no function. Those are not connected. Processor temperature as 32 centigrade, or I mean 32 Celsius. board temperature of 30 Celsius as well. And that's probably referring to the single board computer itself. And they're talking about press the key to update readings. Okay. So I'm pressing the key. I do see some variations there. And it came down in a big way from that 15,000 RPM. That was probably just a placeholder indication. Okay. Hardware voltage monitors. And there's the... If any items require changes, please consult your system supervisor. So those voltages look real close to what they should be. Okay. And I'm going to go through and press a key because those might be a default. Yeah, we can see some variation there as I go through, and it beeps the system and updates those changes. Okay. And intelligent system monitoring just enabled or disabled. Okay. And that's normally what it sets up with the OS to where you can actually have an interface within like Windows to show for your particular chipset of that monitoring. Cache control. Okay, and it has whether it's write protected or write back or disabled. And it does have a scroll bar over on that right hand side, so it probably has some, yeah, they're just off the screen. Caching those particular areas in main memory. Okay. PCI configuration. And I don't have any anything in the PCI slots right now. The Ethernet controller that's on board, and it actually this has 2 Ethernet connections, I believe. Okay, so there's all the MAC address and option ROM scan. For that's maybe like a booting over the network. And the information for both Ethernet connections that are built into this board. And I say graphics device installed, probably no or yes. And PCI I/O allocation scheme. A lot of these are, sayings that I'm not even familiar with, but I mean it explains them in that item specific help. And there's your IRQ sharing to reserve, and of course where they have the arrows, those are particular. Those are leads to a new window of information. And you can go through and exclude or reserve IRQs. You can go through and exclude or make available the direct memory access and the overrides. Okay. So a lot of configuration here. Now, if I had, a PCI device in the slot, it'd be even interesting how it would go through and I guess you can really set it up depending on the PCI device that you have in there. And this is, as you see on the screen identifier, this is the Phoenix BIOS setup utility. I've seen this on other systems, and that's just, you know, what IBM has set up for. Just, it looks like just that splash screen is probably what's changed or what's personalized there. Serial port, this is your I/O device configurations. Just to go through and to be able to go through and, sure, let's go through and enable that. Okay, auto is probably good. Mode, you have your ECP, output only, bidirectional like your PS2s, EPP, and then back to ECP. Let's go bidirectional. Floppy disk controller enabled, base I/O address. Even can adjust the diskette controller, the FDC, the primary, secondary. And then lastly, your PS2 mouse, disabled, enabled, or auto detect. And we do have that mouse plugged in. Okay. So we have our security next. Just going through and where you can set even for a password when it boots up, or even for diskette access. It's got to have a particular, you've got to specify a password. And it's telling right now, at least the supervisor password is clear, user password is clear. And, okay. Which is a good thing. It allows me to get in without having to pull the battery to lose the configuration. Power savings disabled. Standby timeout. And customized maximum power savings, maximum performance, or disabled. And then you can go through the timeout if you have it set. Okay, and we'll just go back to the disabled. Okay, next up is our boot order, boot device order. And we could go through and specify for the choices of removable devices, assumably that's like USB drives, CD-ROM drive, the hard drive, or network boot on this system. And then we have the exit page, so we can go through and even saving CMOS to flash. Now that's kind of interesting. And or even restoring it from flash if there's any profile that has that. And that's just backing up that configuration. So that's kind of a nice feature as well. In this instance, I'm just going to go through and exit saving changes. Standard screen asks us up or prompts us again. Okay. And it doesn't have any devices here, so it's just going to go through and probably display the splash screen. It does have, you can't really see it for the banner of my video capture, but it is has that bar down at the bottom for the starting. There can be seen a little bit better. And I went through and chose, it's probably going through and looking for boot devices or whatever from there. and it's not going to really find anything. So yeah, operating system not found. So let's flip back over to the camcorder. Okay. And to get myself back up on the screen finally, we're still at a 30-minute video. So I didn't go through. I wanted something more like 10 or 20 minutes, but oh well. We went over and did one. So I'm going to get that noisy system shut off. And if you enjoy this content, and like I say, in a later video, I'll go through and feature the 7500 series is the IBM Industrials, and the 7585s that I have, and 7586. I think there's a couple different models that are in that same basic case, but I'll get those out, and that is going to be a really long video. This one I'm going to throw. I'm going to have a separate list for just this content, the PICMG boards, and a separate playlist. So, you know, it's all the videos that are related to that will be put in there. But it's been another video. So if you enjoy the content, click on that like button. Please subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already. Recommend it to your friends for them to subscribe as well, so we can gain that nice subscriber base, get up to where really gets up above 1,000 people is the basic level I'm looking at right now, at least. But that's all I have for now. This is IBM Museum. Thank you.